I just want there to be representation and the government to fear the people. That's all I want.
Yeah. Yes, that's all we want. Just the government to fear the people. Is that too much to ask for?
Welcome to Unqualified Advice, the show where we try to make sense of business, investing, and life with just enough experience to get ourselves in trouble.
I'm Sean, and he's Dan. We both started different careers, Dan in IT, climbing the ranks to Chief Technology Officer in New York, and me in manufacturing, managing production quality across 3 countries.
At some point, we both decided we didn't know enough. So we went back to school for our MBAs. Me at Columbia Business School, and Sean at the University of Houston downtown.
And after all that, we figured the best way to share what we've learned and what we're still figuring out is to start a podcast.
So, if you like deep dives into decision-making, business strategy, and the occasional half-baked investing theory,
or just enjoy listening to 2 guys challenge each other's ideas and occasionally admit when we're wrong,
you're in the right place. Welcome to Unqualified Advice.
Hey, Dan. So, how are you feeling? Are you ready to go ahead and bolt this place?
I feel like I live in a meritocracy. Yeah. I feel like I live in a meritocracy, and I don't need anyone else in my life. I'm going to pull myself up by the bootstraps, and to hell with anybody else that can't.
Well, I think I think we have some people that we're going to discuss today that feel the same way.
Yeah. I was being facetious a little bit, but you know.
Well, yeah, so we finally got through it. I think we started this book back in December?
Yeah, probably.
November? I don't know when I started. It took me a while to get through this thing because it was just we are today, dear listeners, talking about our experience reading The Sovereign Individual by John Rhys Moog, and I'm forgetting his name now all of a sudden.
James Dale Davidson.
James Dale Davidson. Thank you.
And do you know anything about these authors?
No, other than one of them has a Lord title. That's all I know. You know?
It's not bad.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because maybe understanding some of their context would help. But I think I had enough time just getting to know their ideas that I have. My intuition is that they are from moneyed families, have a lot of education, and took a lot of philosophy classes in college. But that's just my intuition. But how far did you make it through? Did you get all the way through? Did you come up a little shy?
I listened to it, and I think I've got like 2 hours left.
So for all of my griping and moaning about this, I will say that last 2 hours, I think chapters 10 and 11 do have some good nuggets in them, and there's some nuggets there that I actually wanted to touch on today. So maybe you won't have to read it after this.
Well, I actually think that's kind of perfect because we've been circling around this. If you listen to a couple prior episodes, I think I've got a kind of zinger on my take from this, or a take from this book. Mm-hmm. We don't need to go over that again here, but we can dive into the takeaways. I think this is squarely in one of the books that could have been like a quarter the length, or even smaller, in order to deliver its message.
Yeah, I think a quarter feels about right. I definitely would say half of the fluff could have been trimmed away. There was, all in all, 11 chapters. And if you listen to it via the audiobook, I also downloaded the
PDF,
the Kindle book, so I could go snag quotes, as I like to do. Bookmark the little things I like in the audiobook, and then I go back and kind of reread that part and the context around it a little more closely. Just how I choose to absorb these things. You do as you wish. No, but all in all, it was 11 chapters and 22 hours or 23 hours. So it's about 2 hours each chapter, being about 2 hours long. There's good fiction books that are that long.
Yes.
What I'm saying,
or really dense podcast episodes where it's like I got a lot out of that 2 hours, and and some of these chapters I was like, I think I disappeared for half of it.
Yes. What ended up happening to me is I'd find myself thinking about work of the day and what I had been doing or what I needed to do, depending upon which way I was coming or going. And missed I'd say a good third of this novel, or this was whatever this is. I definitely probably did not absorb fully. And, one of the, I guess, drawbacks of consuming something via audiobook.
I don't know. I feel like if I did it by print, I would have put it down and not picked it up.
Honestly, that's true. I don't think I would have actually gotten through to the end. And there were times when you hear something and then you say, wait, what? And, hit back and re-listen. And I think it's 100%. A good way to kind of get through some more dense content like this sometimes.
Yeah.
A quick breakdown of kind of the structure. Chapter 1, they talk about the transition of the year 2000. So for context, this was released in 1996, I think, if memory serves. So, we're almost 30 years since its publication. So they start off talking about what they're calling the fourth stage of human society, being the information age, where they're really just talking about the coming of the information age. And honestly, I do have to give them a lot of credit. They predicted a lot of things that we have seen actually come to fruition in terms of the way we've utilized technology now for completely taking over our banking lives, completely taking over so many of the transactions we used to do in person, now our e-commerce transactions. And this was 96 when Amazon was maybe just opened, or was that 99 or 98 when that happened?
Yeah, good question. The internet was fake, right? People were measuring eyeballs, and Wall Street was all like, measure eyeballs, we need to measure dollars.
Yes. I remember at that time there's still being discussions of like, oh, this internet thing's just gonna be a fad.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I don't think, by and large appreciated to the level that they did actually kind of understand that and, kind of see the coming of smartphones and cryptocurrency and a lot of things that they did kind of say, more or less say something like this will exist. So I found that, at least a little rewarding to get through. But then they're, delve into kind of,
but it's also like totally inflammatory at times too. Like the Y2K stuff, like they went off of the deep end on like what's going to happen and how that's going to play out. And I'm sitting there listening to it going like, I remember my mom having to prepare her office for this and how much work it was and expense and so on and so forth. And they did what they could. And then it was kind of like, well, we'll see what happens. And but yeah, they were banking on like blackouts, chaos, all kinds of stuff. And I was like, got that one wrong.
Did your mom work for the university?
No, she worked in a doctor's office.
Oh, even more understandable. Okay. I would call these guys doomers.
Yes.
Right? So there's overall
squarely, yes.
Okay, so yeah, they're hyperbolic to the negative in general, where I was trying to think about this in context of the fourth turning, because we had both come into this book after hearing it recommended by some channels where we also heard the fourth turning recommended on. We really got a lot out of that book and really liked talking about that. So we thought we'd pick this one up. And the way it was introduced to us, or at least to me, was that it's kind of like a companion piece to the fourth turning and kind of like imagining what's coming out of the fourth turning. I thought that was on the Made You Think podcast, Nat Eliason's podcast. And I thought that was a very interesting argument for wanting to get into it. And I will say, yes, this is like, okay, I could see this being in that time frame after the ekpyrosis and the crisis of the fourth turning, coming into this new age. And I think this is an imagination of what that would look like. And I just think it's the shittiest version of that.
Well, okay. Say more on that, because I feel like, I look at it and think for sure. Okay. So here's my breakdown. The picture they paint seems to be like, oh, this is how the world will be. Whereas I think it's like more, this is how the rich people will be.
Yes.
Around the world.
Exactly. I feel that's why I said, and I think they come from a moneyed background, because I think they have a very cavalier attitude towards the 95% of people that actually none of this will actually quite apply to, right? And they even talk about a number towards the end of saying, in the future, we envision there being 100 million ultra rich that could go and form their own society. And honestly, if you think about the total population and the top 1%, they're probably right.
When I pick at the book and pick at the ideas of this book, it almost makes me feel shallow, because in a way, this is very expansive and optimistic. It's like, if you have the willingness and agency over your own mind to do things, then you could be in some echelon of what they describe.
Yes.
Which I think would be amazing if more people were to be elevated into this way of thinking. Then, I think that we might see some very interesting outcomes for people who would otherwise, if they'd have been infected with some other kind of psychology, would be less actualized.
I get that. Yeah, that makes sense, because these are the people that they would be talking about here are really high agency people as well, right? To do any of this. And I think there's again, there are a lot of good ideas and things. I'm like, I kind of agree with that. Okay. Oh, that happens, sort of.
Can we make it happen more? I think would be the correct follow-on question, right? Rather than just stuffing it down people's throats like dogma, or acting like it's just this way and we're going to leave the 95% behind because whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm wondering who they're envisioning is going to be mining the copper for all their devices that they're running, or that are running this future.
Robots.
And then we have zero scarcity, right? So then you go to a Star Trek future versus this dystopian future, right? And how do you then get through that transition? That's a different sci-fi future entirely in my mind.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because it shifts the way everything happens, and I don't know what that's going to look like when it does happen someday, because we're going to try it eventually, and it'll be a big experiment somewhere, and it'll either, who knows? I was going to say either, but no, there's like thousands of ways that could probably play out.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that's like the 3-body chaotic problem, right? Like, you stuff the idea into the box, and then it's like you don't have any mathematical proof of how it comes out on the other side.
Exactly. So let's just quickly kind of highlight the arch of kind of this book, and then I want to really dig into a couple ideas in those later chapters. So in earlier chapters, they introduced this idea of megapolitics, which I kind of, after having read more of the book, I thought I would have a better grasp of what they meant when they were talking about it. They keep using the word a couple of times later on, but really they just introduce this idea that's kind of like macroeconomics for politics, is I think the best way to think about it. And talking about how we've moved from, I forget the age, feudal age to feudal agricultural to industrial, now to the information age, moving through these, progressing through these stages, and how those are kind of mega political transformations in which like the technology fundamentally changed the way that society interacted and interconnected. So like, I think of like the example they used
to do another one.
Exactly. And I think that's clear that we're seeing a shift there, which is also
so it matches a turning and like paradigm.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I mean, for me, the thing that shook me, I just want to say shook, that's not the right word. They didn't shake me necessarily in anything, but that made me go, the most was they're talking about the timeline over which these transitions happen, and how they made a very cogent argument for the Industrial Revolution, and really kind of starting about 200 years prior to where most people give it credit for, and talking about how during that time the power of the church really crumbled, and the way societies organized transformed. That made a lot of sense, and I feel like I can apply that and overlay that to today, somewhat. And like maybe
because that change coincided with the printing press, So it was a fundamental shift in information access and dissemination, fundamental change in power structure, because really the Catholic Church was the biggest form of government worldwide at that point. And
Is it still in the top 100 today, you think?
In terms of governmental power
I don't like kind of. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking of it like a different
or
way. Never mind.
political
It's a
power?
silly sidebar. I'm
It's an
sorry, I
interesting
distracted you, Dan.
question. No.
Well, because I mean, yeah, no, like then we could start. You could talk about Mormons and Scientology too, and like there's like anyway.
Well, that's the biggest hedge fund. It
Yeah,
is.
it is.
It is
It
the biggest hedge
truly
fund.
is. It truly is. They're good at it. I'll say that.
They are very good at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Where were we? Yeah. So talking about the move from agricultural industrial revolutions and how long those transitions took, I think that was useful for me to really see that okay, this stuff can be going on, and it's not like it's not a binary, right? It's going to be a weird, slow metamorphosis into whatever the next thing is.
Because there'll be so much resistance to change, as well as pockets of people picking it up, and countries with governments and societies and structures that allow for more change, and then others that don't, and then some that are more connected and less connected. It's like the future's here, but distributed unevenly.
Yeah. I just, for some reason, got a mental vision of a lava lamp when you were talking about that for some reason. I don't know.
Maybe I should get one. Just remind us of the chaos.
I like it.
Move with it. Don't move against it.
Yes. Yes.
Wu Wei or whatever.
The Wu Wei, from the Tao Te Ching, exactly. The spirit of water, essentially.
Yeah.
So after digging through a bunch of very detailed information about the agricultural revolution and the decline of the church, and
very detailed, listeners, very detailed.
A couple interesting little factoids along the way about like how the one of the popes used to have an accountant to count the number of orgasms that the clergy had at the orgies because he valued virility. There were a few interesting little factoids, but really just that's the 40% of the book that needed to really be pared down. I think that's where we got really kind of frustrated.
Is there any corollary between a pope counting the orgasms of his clergy and Gavin Newsom dining at French Laundry during the pandemic? Is there any sort of corollary there? Like power structures and people at the top and living completely differently than the people they lead?
Oh man, I didn't get that at first, but now that it clicks, that yes. Because do as I say, not as I do, right?
Very much so, yeah. Like I mean, I think we all expect a bit of it, and then when it's that far, we're like, oh no, burn it down. Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of what's going on today.
Exactly. It's like burn this down because I don't trust any of you that you're actually running it right. Yeah.
Yes. So
Chaos Monkey, start throwing your grenades.
Indeed.
And that's a really good observation, Dan, because if it had been like hosting a party in his backyard, that'd be one thing, but it was out at
no, it's fine dining, Michelin restaurant. It's just like it had, I don't know, it was all the things, really.
Yeah.
Except there wasn't an orgy at the end, or maybe we don't know.
Well, hey, was that before Epstein or after Epstein?
I'm not looking it up.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the next.
On to the next thing. No, it was a good distraction. So that they actually, after getting through a very detailed history lesson, get into a little bit of forecasting, so to speak. Well, not so to speak. They start forecasting about what they see coming and talking about the emergence of the cyber economy. And this is where we touched on a few points where they seeing a borderless digital economy and how there won't be able to be control executed over it. And I don't think that's quite right. Do you, Dan?
I just don't see how it's possible without like the world order totally crumbling, kind of like all at once. But at the same point, like from the ashes of anything, there's always been power that arises. So I don't understand how. I mean, just look at Peter Thiel and the people most connected with him. Do you believe that they would not end up like if I snapped my finger today and all governmental power just dissipated do you not believe that Peter Thiel would exercise his power to become one of the most powerful people on Earth, if he isn't already? He seems to be a puppeteer, or not puppeteer, or like a, he's behind the scenes working magic.
He's like the hand of the king in Game of Thrones or something, where he's there prodding along on the court,
On the court, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, I am with you. I remain completely skeptical that it would be 100%. We live in a beautiful age where there's very little violence, but if you look through most of recorded history, it's just humans killing each other over sex, food, or territory.
Or yes, and yes, I want to get more onto that later, specifically around the territory, because I think that was an argument they make kind of later in the book, or they actually kind of pick apart a bit, and I have a couple of good quotes.
Okay.
So, but like what I don't think they fathomed is how in control a government can be of a digital system, i.e., China and us, basically not allowing TikTok here and being able to put in firm controls around with our networks. I don't know that, if you wanted to escape that, you would have to have, the only thing that I guess that maybe with SpaceX making Starlink a reality, that maybe you could skirt around a lot of government controls.
So
with
all
a
it ever
does.
Uplink. All it ever does is the power then goes into someone's hands, and then that person or entity has to be benevolent.
Yes.
After Bretton Woods or whatever, and the U.S. says, we are going to control the open oceans, and if you align with our values, meaning don't kill your own people, don't invade other countries, then all the sea lanes will be open to trade for you. We will not charge you for the protection of open seas. Right?
Yep.
And then that made the whole global order and economy better, bigger, reduced poverty at record pace than the humankind has ever seen. And so Starlink or some other entity, it's like, wherever that power floats to, will they be as benevolent as that ethos was for, from the United States in that example, or SpaceX currently, whatever.
Yeah. Well, in this way, the SpaceX thing, that would be the people to escape. That would be how they would be escaping the control, right? So you would still have the government control over, I think, over your land digital lines. I think that's going to be always your whatever nation state government that you're in would be able to institute some sort of control over that data moving there. But if it's just moving through space, I don't, that would be the one way that you would be able to escape control, was the way I was framing that thought.
I see what you mean.
But I like your Bretton Woods analogy way better.
well, I would take it. There's two things I would connect is like that the paradigm of Bretton Woods post World War II, the small L liberal world order, and man, my brain just lost it, man. God,
it happens.
Say your last point again.
It was about. Now I lost everything.
It's like a yawn.
Yeah. No, we were Bretton Woods compared to basically using a Starlink as an example of a way to escape control, right? Escape control.
Yeah. The other thing I would connect here is Ben Thompson's aggregation theory from Stratechery, and how, I think a lot of people wish that, Lena Khan had been successful in taking down Amazon and Microsoft again and Google and whatever. And aggregation theory would hold basically that, it doesn't matter. You could destroy the entirety of Google, but there would be something else that would rise and take up that much market share again, because it's not about controlling supply. Its demand actually goes to the one place, because the bigger the one place is, the more useful it is, and therefore it hoovers up more demand.
Network effects, essentially.
Yes, exactly. And at this point, you should expect behemoths in tech. That's kind of just how it goes. And, you know, in some sort of power vacuum with this many people on Earth, it's like, yeah, there's going to be big powers that coagulate again. It's not going to be this like magical sovereign individual that just flies from place to place and money moves with me everywhere I go and I'm completely safe and people want to. I was like, what? Come on. The more alone you are, the more of a target you are.
I was going to say, okay, why don't you, go ahead, all you 50 million ultra billionaires, go move into that one little valley over there. Do that. Just go do that. See how that plays out. Like that's where they drop a bomb. Like that's how that's where the terrorists go after. Like, you think you can build secure systems, but can you? Because he's, again, as they argue, one actually interesting point they make about the advancement of tech is that it does kind of make it easier for the smaller actor to cause a lot of disruption in a defense system. Like you don't have to be necessarily a global scale player to take down the control systems of a very
that's important... America and Britain.
Yeah.
Back a few years. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Vietnam, America. Different. Back a few years. And now we're seeing it in Ukraine. Vietnam was not well funded or protected.
No.
They just did it better.
Yeah. Yes.
On home territory, and we're more motivated. A litany of reasons.
Yep. Exactly. So that's an interesting analogy. I hadn't thought of it that way. Now you made me forget I was thinking, Dan.
Yeah. No, you were thinking about how like like the small guy still has power.
Yeah. Yes. It gives other avenues for the small guy to have power. Yes, absolutely. American, Britain, and Vietnam. Yes, absolutely. Where you don't. So that was kind of an interesting point. But I don't see how you don't have still, again, power law dynamics, network effects, where it just pays to have scale and size because of the other efficiencies, and because we as people don't want to work 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day, if we don't have to. If we can be more efficient with our time and have a system that allows us to have leisure, I think I don't see how that goes away, or how people don't keep trying to move towards some level of that ideal, right?
Yes, and I also don't understand, like, just going back to, like, I can't get past, like, the idea that power structures wouldn't naturally unfold. And if those of us who are idealistic and agentic decide that, like, oh, we are going to shun power structures and we are going to remain sovereign individuals and we will not assign ourselves or sign up for some sort of structure that projects its power upon other people, the more we resist that, the more you would, I think, add room for the kind of power that you wouldn't want to see in the world.
Yes.
And then it doesn't take long. So I'm reading this other book, Prometheus Rising. It's great. Here's a line from it. I feel like it connects to this idea just a little bit. So suspicion leads to more suspicion. The only alternative was suggested sarcastically by playwright Bertolt Brecht, who was hounded by U.S. secret police as a communist and by East German secret police later as not sufficiently communist. Quote, if the government doesn't trust the people, Brecht asked innocently, why doesn't it dissolve them and elect a new people? No way has yet been invented to elect a new people, so the government will instead spy on the existing people with increased vigor.
That's good. That's really good. Okay,
I thought it was a great line. And now that I'm thinking about, like, these power structures and this idea that they wouldn't naturally reoccur, or that the smartest, most benevolent people would try to avoid them, I feel like that would actually create room for a darker world.
Yeah. Yes, it would, because
someone's going to want power. That is a default. It's humanity we're talking about.
Precisely. We naturally organize and structure ourselves, but I guess I could see a splintering, though, right? On the other side, could larger nations split into smaller nations? Or is it more likely that Russia goes and tries to remake the USSR?
Yeah, I don't know. This is where I keep going back to Zion, and it's like how long does the power of geography hold? Because when he talks about geography and why Russia is scared about this border or that border, and then why the United States is so protected and powerful, and all these things, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. Oh, that idea makes sense too. Does it just reoccur?
Yeah, because we do just have this natural geography because
Like
you
the
can't
Caucasus are still a mess, the Balkans are still a mess, America still is powerful. It's like, does it just recur? Slightly different, but recur.
That's a good question.
I don't know.
Did you just see a little thing pop up on the screen?
Yeah, you got a little thumb up. I don't know why.
I don't know what that was from. Yeah. Okay, interesting. So actually, this all ties to one of the quotes I wanted to bring up. So I want to bring this in here too. A moment's reflection shows that technology of the information age is not inherently a mass technology. In military terms, as we have indicated, it opens the potential for smart weapons and information war in which logic bombs could sabotage centralized command and control systems. So that quote just danced back and forth of like 2 points you made. One, technology is better when it's inherently a mass technology, right?
That doesn't mean that it has to be centrally located.
It doesn't have to be. Oh, yes, you're right.
No. I mean, I built high availability systems that were geographically dispersed. Like you kill one place, we stay going.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And if you listen to the leadership at Anduril, they're designing systems that do similar things. And I'm sure whatever they talk about in public is much further behind than where they actually are.
Yeah, I would love to know more about what's going on there most days, I think.
Yeah, I think it would be a fun place to work.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting company.
Yeah.
I forget where I was going with that after that aside, but
read the quote one more time.
A moment's reflection shows the technology of the information age is not inherently a mass technology. In military terms, as we have indicated, it opens the potential for smart weapons and information war in which logic bombs could sabotage centralized command and control systems. So yeah, again, I don't see how you could actually sabotage a complete centralized command and control system. I mean, I guess maybe the Treasury, from what I've heard lately, their server structure might be a little outdated and in need of some improvements. But I think for a large portion of everything, it's got to be decentralized in a way that we probably don't understand for security reasons.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're not out there touting like our resilience as a U.S. government. When in fact, perhaps there's much more resiliency than we know. I hope.
Yeah, like it's kind of the opposite of having a big weapon, right? If you have a good defense network, you don't necessarily want to give you all the details about what that defense network entails, because then I'm just giving you a way to start planning for how to get around it. So I'm sure that there's a lot of things that we don't understand, but again, I can't see how this exactly plays out on like the way they think, but I don't know. It's still an interesting argument. And again, with the difference in networks, I don't know where I'm going. I'm going to just shut up now for a minute.
Well, okay. So I think maybe one point that I think, honestly, I feel like this is a point that Elon Musk is trying to stuff down the throat of the American government. And to date, it has been resistant. Mm-hmm. Of you can't keep building huge, enormous things. You need to build tons of tiny little things. And I think the easiest analogy would be Starlink again, where it's like, instead of there being like 8 satellites up there that are geospatially locked to the United States and providing internet, which would probably be like the DirecTV model, he's got like, I don't know now. I think there's a rocket going up every single day, launching more of these things. Like it's a constellation of miniature satellites, right? Mm-hmm. And then you see the same thing with the drones and different ways and means that are being exercised in Russia and Ukraine. And I can't help but to think that the future, we are witnessing the paradigm shift of how these things are conducted. Because what's the use of a nuclear weapon unless you have, like, you have to have even
A big
someone with
population
like,
center.
well, it was even like a slightly psychotic leader is probably not going to launch one.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
that's
that's
how
true.
deep you have to go in order to be willing to launch one at this point, because it's mutually assured. So most power people are really interested in maintaining power, so they're not going to launch one because that automatically means that they will no longer have power because they'll be vaporized as well. So now it's
That's a
down to
fine point.
tiny
As
little
long as you
things.
know where to hit them, that's a fine point. But eventually they would get there. But you would, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the deterrence around using those large weapons has kept us safe for so many years, at least safe from their particular usage. Though they still try to build plenty big regular bombs like the Moab, the Trump wanted to display in his last term.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
it's still.
how much of that is marketing?
I think for him that was a wanting to show power and punch somebody in the face, and it wasn't
Yeah.
even not like a particularly good application of it from what I remember at the time. It was overpower for what they needed to do, or what they thought they needed to do. But yeah, I think just to demonstrate that, hey, I'm kind of crazy enough to pull this out.
Those are a horse loose in the hospital. What do we do? I don't know. There's never been a horse loose in the hospital.
What's that from?
John Mulaney.
Okay.
It was very. I like that skit.
That's good. I don't know. There's never been a horse loose in the hospital. That's a great analogy. I don't know. We're going through this for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of our of our current head, they had a quote that I found. I'm like, okay, I bet you can just say this every year for the last 200 years. Corruption is far more universal and widespread than previously thought. Evidence of it is everywhere in developing countries with growing frequency in industrial countries. Prominent political figures, including presidents of countries and ministers, have been accused of corruption. In a way, this represents the privatization of the state, in which its power is not shifted to the market as privatization normally implies, but to government officials and bureaucrats. It's like, okay, yeah, that's just the way it always is, or always seems. And right, because I would say arguably that it feels 2024 corruption, 2025, I'm sorry, corruption, and acceptance of it is through the roof compared to 1996.
Well, hold on. Let's, instead of going back that far, what about 2023 to 2025?
Yeah, no, it feels like we hit an inflection point, right? Kind of.
No,
honestly,
I want you to explain more.
Okay.
Was there more corruption in 2023 than 2025, or reversed?
I feel as though there is more open acceptance of corruption at this point in 2025 than in 2023, specifically with what is going on around DJT on the stock market, the Trump coin, the Melania coin, the associated ETFs they are launching now at Trump.fi or whatever.
Okay.
That this is clearly a
is this
personal
corruption
enrichment.
Or is it just grift?
Well, how much is what's the difference? What's your if
I don't know. I really don't know the answer. But my question is, or are there different words to choose? What's behind closed doors and cannot
I'm
be?
I'm going to say yes. It's corruption because they're gifting these shares to people like the FBI director and stuff as.
Yeah, that's complete corruption. But it's being done in the open. Like I want better words. I want better words. There's out in the open versus not out in the open.
It's not even it's it's out in the open in the middle of a field beneath a giant neon sign with spotlights circling around saying corruption going on over here, and people just keep driving down the highway. That's what I feel like is where it's at.
Yeah. I also think you to have people who are very well educated and know their stuff argue right there against you.
I would love. Actually,
I'm not that
what
person,
are the?
but
No,
I think
but okay.
the
Let's.
grift within the Democrats is extreme as well.
Oh, I do too. That's also fair.
That's why I'm
That's
trying to
absolute.
throw that.
I'm
Like,
not. Well,
are you angry because you can see it now?
no,
Like,
I could say the same thing about Pelosi or any of the members of
100%,
Congress that have been insider trading for
yes,
forever.
yes.
What I was, I guess, trying to highlight is I feel as though there has been a little elevation recently, specifically around the personal enrichment of the current system and the current person in office, right? But you are absolutely 100% right that this level of corruption, like,
one more question:
okay.
Are people more okay with it because they feel as if they can participate in it because it's out in the open? Whereas the secret backroom dealings, no one else can participate in. So it's like, I would like to burn the people in the room. That's the reaction. That's not me. That's the reaction, right?
That's a hell of an interesting question because you can go and be like, well, this is clearly gonna do some numbers. Let me go ahead and get on this Friday night of the Trump coin launch because
there's a bunch of people
crazy.
That fuck ton of money.
Yeah, so I think that does help.
I was not one of them.
Yeah, no, that was I. Yeah, I saw it going on Saturday. I was like, it's not too late. Why am I not doing this? And I was like, because I don't want to participate because I don't want to help drive the system. So I just quietly sat on the side and was like, yeah, I'm sure I could do fine. And I probably would have done pretty well, but it wasn't worth it for me. Also, then the stress of, well, how quickly before this blows up, also would.
Yeah, it would be like make money and get out.
Yeah.
You'd have to.
Yeah. No, but Dan, that's a great point you just brought up. Because I think you could go back in every administration for the last.
Because I think it's all bad. It's
Yeah.
all bad, and we should accept that there's always going to be some. But like finding out that we've got some huge stuff and that we could never see it, that makes people really angry. And then to see it just out in the open where you can participate in it a little bit, I think that's how it's like, well, made some other people rich, so then people are okay with it. It's like a lottery or something.
I think you're onto something with that because I feel like there's less rage in 2025 than
I agree with
2017 than 8 years ago. I feel like there's a lot less rage around, which I'm all right with, frankly. Or maybe I'm just not looking in the right spots, or I don't know.
Well, it's only been a couple weeks, so let's hang on. But I agree with you. General feeling. It just seems like there's a certain kind of levity that has been introduced.
Kind of just become a nerd to the situation. We've seen it before. We're not so scared. I think people get mad when they're scared. And there were a lot of people that were scared for probably not great reasons. They probably didn't need to be. And now they realize that maybe I was overreacting. Okay. This is just a
horse loose in a hospital.
It's just a horse loose in a hospital.
What's the next quote?
Okay. Well, here's an idea they had that this will never happen.
Okay.
So they make the point that voting is kind of like a proxy for a military contest, right? Like
voting is a proxy for military contest.
For a geographically aligned military contest, in a sense, the way we have set up our structure, the people of the United States vote about who's going to be leading of the the whole nation
instead of duking it out.
Right?
Which that's definitely the old way. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting point. I'm like, yes, that sounds accurate. Then they propose a change to voting that we could do with computer technology. Computer technology offers to make truly representative government. The supposed problem of excessive campaign expenditures and undoubted annoyance of chronic political campaigning could be resolved in an instant. Rather than being elected, representatives could be selected by a sortition entirely at random with a high statistical probability that their talents and view match those of the population at large. This would be merely a modern version of the ancient Greek system of selection by lot. It's like, well, that sounds like a lovely way to get a House of Representatives elected, sort of. But I don't see any way anybody lets that happen, right?
Yeah, no, heels are too dug in at this point. One,
Yeah.
Two. What about preference falsification? How do you know what people want? I think the last couple elections are pretty clear examples that we don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think their point was just saying that the people that are elected are, they are campaigning and saying these things that they will represent you, but it's not necessarily, you don't get a representative percentage portion of the population actually running the country. You get a lot of lawyers and a lot of narcissists. So if you wanted a country that was maybe perhaps more sanely managed, you would have people that were more accurately representing the population at large, which, it's a nice, lovely utopian ideal.
It is
Like
aimed at
maybe,
reducing the tyranny of the bureaucrat.
yeah, exactly. And the honestly, the corruption that you get associated with it, right? Because by running the campaigns, you have to spend that money on. People make promises, and you get, it's a corruption inducing system.
Yeah. It's still
Yes.
a lot better today than it was in like 1880, or when was. There's a particular name for this process where it's like, it was like cronyism defined, and that's how America ran for a while. It was like, you do this for me, I'll get you a seat, and that's it really was just tit for tat like that. Inside job.
Very much. So speaking of kind of like cronies and all this, that as to wind up, we were talking last week about Singapore recently. I think it was last week or the week before. What do you know about their how they pay their legislature or their government?
I don't know anything about the legislature, but the bureaucrats, the people who like run government, are paid extremely well, like investment banker salary.
So here's something interesting. Performance-based compensation for legislatures, paying leaders on the basis of their performance, just as a logical extension of Lee Kuan Yew's flexi-wage program in Singapore, which pays government employees based on real growth of the Singaporean economy. There is every reason to believe that the performance would be greatly enhanced if the pay of legislatures and executives were keyed to objective measures of performance, such as the growth of after-tax per capita income. Pay them on a basis of performance, and the chance that they would perform would increase 1,000-fold.
I'm really biased because I can be motivated by money, but I think this is a brilliant idea. And I remember being a teen and having arguments with people I grew up around that, like, they were like, well, the president makes $400,000 a year and that's way too much, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, DC seems expensive and it's the leader of the free world. I think maybe we should be paying the person a lot more, and then tying it to performance metrics, I think, is bloody brilliant.
Yeah. I want this. Like, this is what I want.
This is what I want. I don't want them to only care about being reelected or not. I want them to care about outcome.
Yeah, and also not even on the elected officials, even in the
inside the
government agencies themselves, right? Like, they should.
I think some of these incentives are hard to structure, though. Like, how do you incentivize FBI agents? Are you just like number of arrests? And it's like, well,
yeah, you're right. That's right. You can incentivize bad behavior or get weird.
But
gaming.
If you're really thoughtful about it, I think you could be.
Yeah. And maybe not
it may not be every
more of a
position
flat
in the
base
government,
and having like a 30% based off of incentive structure type of situation. More like a bonus type structure, where certain metrics have to be progressed towards or met. I don't know. I will be like, this is the type of thing I could see Doge trying to do.
Yes.
And so I'm really interested to see how all that keeps playing out, because it's been a wild first couple of weeks with the things they've cut, threatened to cut, backed off, started cutting again.
So I had some time this morning. I was at the gym and let my mind wander a little bit. And I started, again, kind of going back to one of my themes for the year, is just like questioning my priors and being more comfortable with thoughts that would otherwise have normally made me uncomfortable. So, Doge.
How do you feel?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm trying to explore. What if this is the rising of the ashes, the phoenix returns moment for the United States? The purging and ruffling of the molting of feathers that needs to happen to reinvent oneself, to shed the excess pounds so that you can run the mile. What if this is what's happening? And if so, and if succeeds, once again, the founding fathers will have created the most brilliant form of government yet seen in humanity. There's a lot of what ifs there, but I thought it was an interesting thought that occurred to me.
I have been very conflicted in my emotions around it because so much of me is like, yes, 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 cut where you can.
And then other parts I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
But other parts I'm like, also, but those are people that are becoming unemployed, jobs that, hardships that are going to be felt. Some things that probably
therein lies reinvention.
Right? It's cut. Yeah. So,
but you don't get these movements without pain. Yeah.
Hey, you know what though? At least we're talking about this for the first time in a long time. So maybe we start, then the legislature can come in and say, hey, no, actually that's illegal for you to do that. And the checks and balances, you start working against each other a bit is what we actually,
and therein lies the whole
hopefully
point
it doesn't grind to a halt, but hopefully then it keeps the momentum focused on the things that can happen and need to happen in a more impactful way. But yeah, I'm oddly optimistic about parts of it, but then
oddly optimistic. Yeah, I agree.
But then also when I find out that, a few people that might now have read-write access to like a system like the Treasury payment system that, distributes, very complex and to make sure that all the government bonds get paid, everything that needs to go outwards from the government actually executes. It's like, well, man, what if because sometimes there's been bugs on Twitter where they released an update and he's just going to try to be doing something positive, but he just accidentally like screws something up and kills our
not
credit
even
rating.
intentional.
I'm not even like, I'm going to like best case scenario, or not best case scenario, but theoretically I could see them going in and trying to make things more efficient, say, we're going to make this system better and run better. And then a bug comes up and like, oh, there goes, we just downgrade our credit rating with Moody's. Yeah. Yes. And that's a system where I don't want the move fast, break things mindset. And it works great on Twitter when you can, it bugged, we'll go fix it quick and get it running better. Okay, fine. People get a little snarly about bugs occasionally.
We're going to call Johnny. He's got to rewrite 4 lines of the algo and we'll recommit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So little more worrisome on government payments when what could be going wrong. But anyway,
so one other controversy attached to Doge that has been on the airwaves, it seems, is that there, I don't know how many, 5 it seems. I'm going off of little meme pictures. I don't really know much information here. Of 4 or 5 guys who are like in their 20s and are like, getting after it.
Mm-hmm.
And the controversy that exists because of their age. Did you see any of this?
I have not seen it. No, I have not. I know that like there's one guy involved that's like 25 doing a bunch of stuff, but no.
I don't know enough about any of these individuals, and I think there's been some additional controversy with maybe at least one of them, but I'm going to stick with just the age thing. I thought it was very interesting that, I don't know, I kind of put it in the same bucket as NIMBYism, right? It's just people being angry.
Well, then, but no, actually, I did see, and then I saw somebody else, I believe, grab that, a clip of that post or somebody that being talked about and said, but if you look at the age of the founding fathers in 1776, it was like 18 to 26. It's like,
yes.
And your point is
the geezer was 32 or something,
Yeah. Jefferson was 33 or something like that.
Franklin really was the oldest guy.
Franklin was. Yeah.
He was the old wise man in the room at that point. And he probably was like 50. And then, after the country's actually formed and he gets to go gallivant around France and raise money for more Revolutionary War stuff or whatever, he's having a great time and lives into his 80s. Something like that.
Yeah. So the age part, I don't care so much about. I'm like, that's not really a disqualifying thing. It's not where we have it like in the Constitution where you say you have to be at least 35 to do this. That's just find the people that are talented to do the right work. Now, if there's other things that they're doing that are untoward and maybe give us reason to question their motives, then maybe that should be discussed in more depth. But yeah, not based based on the age alone. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, with you on that one. All right, what you got?
Well, I have. So we've gotten all the way up through chapter 10 here in my notes.
Of 12?
Of 11.
Of
10
11.
of
Okay.
11. The chapter 10 was kind of focusing on the twilight of democracy. I believe that was actually the title of it. And chapter 11
we're gonna have to talk
is
about that. I don't want democracy to go away.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I mean. They were just talking about, that was their vision of, okay, replacing things with this representation by sortition and things of that nature, like what they were trying to envision what things might look like.
Okay, so it's not really the end of democracy. It's more like the evolution of democracy into a technocratic republic or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want there to be representation and the government to fear the people. That's all I want.
Yeah. Yes. That's all we want. Just the government to fear the people. Mm-hmm. Is that too much to ask for?
Some days I think so, but you know.
Yeah. So the last chapter is kind of them waxing poetic about morality, and the evolution of morality in the information age. And I have a couple of quotes. One that we already touched on around corruption. But then two others that I think really help summarize who these people are and who the authors were.
Okay.
And in their views. So the first one is the original phrase of John Locke has it precisely. Everyone has a right to life, liberty, and estate. In 1776, Thomas Jefferson added another of Locke's phrases, the pursuit of happiness. That makes a very fine phrase and a very fine aspiration, but life and estate is more down to earth than the phrase life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Society depends absolutely on the right to life and the right to property. In practice, history shows these can be protected when there is liberty. If the state is all-powerful, then the state becomes the great enemy of life, as in wars of aggression, and of individual property by taking an inordinate share of the nation's wealth for its own often undesirable and always wasteful purposes. So I think this is a fine point that they make here, but also then shows you the misanthropic kind of take they have of not looking towards a greater good, right? And making it very much about self-determination, Ayn Rand type progress, I think, or not progress, an Ayn Rand type POV. I don't know. Did that? What did you think about that little blurb? Did that give you any thoughts?
I think the first thought that did occur to me was, and I forget which book I got this from, was that the pursuit of happiness is, as written by Thomas Jefferson, is not the way we take it in our minds today. It is more about like this, I'm going to use the word agentic again. It's this pursuit. It is this ability to. It is this unencumberedness. It is this go reach for your higher ideals. It's not just like I'm walking around and being happy and all my stuff is taken care of. Because I think lots of happiness culture is like just folly anyway. It's this false pursuit. Whereas if you need to dig a hole, then maybe you just go dig it, and then you'll be like, wow, I did a great job digging that hole. And that does much more for your psyche than thinking about happiness, right? So I get you, but I guess I would push back a little bit because I think they're kind of intertwined, even if you use Thomas Jefferson's words instead of John Locke's. Right?
Yeah.
Or
no,
am I twisted in my explanation?
No, you make sense. Yeah, but I guess my only point around that was I think it's a very interesting delineation that Locke would have said life, liberty, and estate. I think that makes it because at the core, like I think they have a very good point. That they're right. Those are the things that the state needs to protect, and this is almost like to me, and again, a philosophical ideal versus a that
you have to have a state in order to have the others.
Yes,
would be John Locke's point of view, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And I think it's what they're arguing, the authors of the book saying, we prefer John Locke's point of view, essentially. And I'm sitting here saying, no, I think Jefferson got it right.
I think Jefferson got it right.
Or improved upon it. And I think your
Well,
explanation of...
he was also writing a completely different document. He was writing a document that basically assumed that there was a state.
Interesting point of view. It's an interesting point of view, or interesting note, right? You're assuming that we are declaring our independence here. The state is assumed and inferred.
Yeah, this is the document that says you have one.
Yes. Interesting. Good point. The last quote, and again, this is, I think. Let me just read it, and I'll let you respond.
Okay.
A godless, rootless, and rich elite is unlikely to be happy or to be loved. This inadequacy in the initial moral education of what will be the dominant economic group of the next century is likely to be reinforced by their life experience. These people will have the discipline of an advantaged technical education of one sort of another to fit themselves for their new roles as the leaders of the new electronic universe. But they will learn from that only some of the moral lessons that have historically been the framework for human social conduct. They may be moral illiterates. They have been taught the lessons of economic efficiency, the use of resources, the pursuit of money, but not the virtue of self-sacrifice, let alone chastity. So I think that is, to
they
me...
They have not learned to suffer.
Yes. And I think this is to me, again, I was trying to look for things that I was trying to understand who these authors are. And I think this shows to me, like, they have a very specific viewpoint of...
on their peer group.
On their peer group, right? Like, this is them talking about their peer group and the weaknesses within their peer group.
This is who they went to undergrad and grad with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. So I think maybe these guys weren't so popular. I don't know. No, they did a lot of moralizing towards the end, and I got the impression that they would prefer, more like a 1950s everybody kind of buttoned up version of society than what's going on today.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I just to give context on the rest of the book for you. Or that's how I was taking it. I'm like, okay, this kind of gives me some context on how they've argued these points and why they're arguing, I think, coming towards, coming out of this crisis or this change.
Okay, hold on. I want to question. I don't know about that, or I am wondering about that. Are we conflating like religion and chastity or whatever these other labels with?
Maybe I might be reading.
We're putting our biases in there, right? Like, I think you and I both would be like, you don't require religion to be of higher service and higher morality, right? And that, I think, is the folly of many religious people's point of view about atheists. Like, without religion, it must mean that you're like an evil person.
Yes. And
both parties guilty there, rather than understanding that you can be moralistic and have really straight and narrow. You could be super straight and narrow and also believe that there's no God. But maybe their point is more that you've got these highly educated, up in the clouds kind of people being elected to power, and these structures, when they themselves have no sense of community, no sense of connection to the broader kinds of people, and therefore they're leading out in a direction that is not connected with the people that are under them. And once you have this crumbling of community or tribe, then your society starts to fall apart. At which point you don't have the government.
I like that take. I like that take, and I like that
because I think the community aspect is like, we're desperate for that now. I think a theme in our notes that you keep coming back to in a couple different lines, and I feel like we should really dive into it soon, is loneliness.
Yes. Okay. I think you're onto something there, right? It's definitely good call calling me out of my biases, by the way. Thank you.
It's hard to see your own. I welcome it anytime you can.
You're absolutely right. And they in that section, they also do make an interesting point around that. There are, at that point in time, kind of like a two systems. One of kind of a more puritanical religious sides, and then one of a more like everything is okay side, or like atheistic side. And they both say, well, you can't feel certain ways about certain things, and they both
that makes them no different from each other.
Intolerance, and that makes them ultimately no different from each other. So I'm
intolerance of intolerance.
Exactly. I'm 100% on board with that. I think that's you. I had forgotten about that until you said that, but yes, good intuition, Dan. Well, that's all I had noted.
I think that was a really good discussion of this book. Frankly, I hope that's how I'm feeling about it right now. I'll go back and listen later, but
yeah.
For anyone who wants to dive into it, like, it's definitely deep material. Like, you do get history lessons. You get some strange and interesting facts. I know we sort of like said, oh, this was a slog, and it was. But I think for certain readers, you still get a lot of fancy out of it.
Yeah, I would say like maybe read chapter 1 and 2 and then 9, 10, and 11, and you got it. I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11. But yeah, it's worth it if you have a lot of time and you really enjoy thinking about this sort of stuff. Yeah. I ended up thinking at one point, I'm not going to finish this, and I ended up getting through it. In the last couple of chapters, I really ended up having some interesting thoughts with myself on. So there's definitely nuggets in here that are worth consideration and deeper thought. And if that doesn't sound like it's up your alley, then go read something that you do want to read. That's what I would say.
Yes. And thanks for joining us while we talk about it.
Yes. Until next time, everybody. This has been some unqualified reading advice. We will talk at you next time.
All right. Cheers, everyone.